Looks like so far we have 9 people signed up to come. Not finding out. So I think we should stick with 3 minutes and then go back around if we have more time.
I like that idea.
We have more people.
7 on the team. So far.
Gary, are you speaking first?
I think you're speaking first. You're doing
Yeah, would you want?
Okay.
intros, and then when it gets to AQCD, I'm gonna do that slide.
Okay, we can also introduce ourselves too.
Okay. Oh, the agenda.
And then-
Introductions. And then it's back to you.
Yeah, and then the project overview and that stuff I can talk. Carrie, where are you gonna stand? Because I was thinking I could stand as well, or they're all. I guess I gotta run.
Well, I can do these buttons. If you're more comfortable standing, I can do the buttons.
I guess I'll stay here. This. Yeah.
Yeah, this is, we really didn't get the word and. It would reschedule. Right, yeah. It's supposed to go there, they go all the way outside, and I think parents just, please come on. Yes, absolutely. I reached out.
Yes.
We have to do transcriptions on the
Yes.
screen, and we should do closed captioning if that's
Yes,
possible.
yes. Give me one moment.
People like that for accessibility.
Yes, let me get that on there.
The
Thank
word.
you. Got it.
Said I'd go into the.
Hi, everyone. It's just after 7 o'clock, so we're gonna get this meeting started. I think we know why we're all here for the draft construction permit for the Air Quality and Climate Division. We have an agenda, so you know what to expect for tonight's meeting. We're going to introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about the meeting logistics for giving comments, and then also making sure we can include the audience and participants that are participating in team meeting. We will give you further instructions on how to submit additional comments after this meeting and what the process will be for issuing the final decision. And then Jay will provide a project summary and overview. So, go ahead, Jay.
And we are the, Air Division. So I'm Jay Hollingsworth. I'm the chief engineer of the permitting section of the Air Division. This is Tony Mathis. He's the environmental engineer that drafted up this permit. Carrie Hangsenberg, she's with DEC. She's our meeting facilitator, and our legal counsel, Rachel Stevens. And we're essentially the Air Division, so we work to protect public health and the environment from effects of diverse air quality, and essentially using our air quality regulations to determine if projects meet the regulations that are in place in the state right now. meeting logistics. Did you want to go through that?
Yeah, I can go through that. So our goal is to have everyone be able to participate in tonight's meeting. We will admit we are new to holding these hybrid meetings, so be patient with us if we do have some technical difficulties, or you may have to repeat something you've already said. If you would like to make a comment, people did note that when they signed in. So we were planning on going in the order of which people signed in to make your comments. We're asking that you limit your comments to about 3 minutes, so we can make sure everybody has a chance to speak. And then at the end of the meeting, if there's more time or you have additional thoughts or comments you'd like to share, we can go ahead and do that again by putting our hands up. Obviously, we're asked that people silence their cell phones. For online participants, if you could make sure that your microphone is muted. And if you would like to make a comment, please note that in the chat. And we will call on you after we go through the first round of comments in the room. And then for general ground rules, we're just asking that one person speaks at a time, that we stay on topic and address the issue that we're here to discuss. Honoring the time limits, raising your hands, giving everyone a fair opportunity to talk. Any comments or questions on that? Something that we missed? Yes,
Will you be keeping track of our time?
I will be keeping track of your time. So I'll give you a little nudge, like 30 seconds before your time's up.
And if you do run out of time, we'll circle back at the end. We just want to make sure we get, everybody gets a chance. So
So when you come to make your comments, we do ask that you say your name before you say your comment. If you don't want to share your name, that is also an option, but just know that it won't be on the official record and may affect rights to appeal the permit later.
yes, if you have to give your name and contact, if you want the right to appeal. So you can make an anonymous comment is also fine.
So we're recording this meeting and we will be using that to draft a response to comments for comments that we can't draft here today. Yeah, and you are open to continue to submit written comments after this meeting till the end of the public comment period. If you have not seen a draft of the permit or you don't have a draft of the permit, it's available online on the DEC's environmental notice bulletin, and over by the sign-in sheet, we have a little handout with a QR code that will get you to the environmental notice bulletin.
We also have a hard copy.
We have some hard
But
copies.
we have a hard copy. Somebody would like that. Yeah.
Is it possible to know how many people are online?
Yes, there are 10.
So we'll remind you of this at the end, again, of the meeting, but if you would like to follow up with more comments, you can email them to an email address that we will share with you, and that is also in the
Right,
public
this
notice.
one right here, folks, that's a general email that we set up a comment box.
Or you can provide comments online for our environmental notice bulletin. They go to the same place. Or lastly, you could send comments by mail. However, all the comments need to be received August 28th by 4:30 p.m.
And I was just going to give a quick project summary. So the applicant here is New England Waste Services of Vermont. The location is the Coventry landfill. They came to us seeking approval to operate the SAP system, which is used for pulling PFAS compounds out of the leachate. And they were running it closed loop for a while, and they come to us seeking approval to run it open loop. And this is roughly the timeline. So that system began running closed loop up at the landfill on June 24th. The application to open that system to the ambient atmosphere came in August 18th. The draft permit was made available on July 17th. And as we mentioned before, we'll run the comment period until August 28th. And just some basic information that's already in that draft permit. They're not anticipated to result in exceeding any of the criteria air pollutants. Stack testing is going to be required for hazardous air contaminants. So those are speciated contaminants that are listed in the appendices of our regulations. And then we're going to require them to do feasibility on testing for PFAS compounds. And they have proposed to put a granulated activated carbon canister on the system for controlling odors. There's our public comment period slide again.
Okay, I think what we're gonna do, yep, is move into, do you want to leave that on the slide while people look for comment?
Sure. We'll leave this one on right here.
Yeah, I think that's.
Yep.
Or do you want to put this on?
Okay, yes. I'm sorry, did somebody want a copy of the? Oh,
Put this one on.
right. So we have a microphone here, so people online can hear us. So we ask that you come up and speak into the microphone. You can stand on whichever side of the podium you're more comfortable. So our first speaker is going to be Peggy Stevens. And I'm gonna.
Hi, I'm Peggy Stevens. I live in Charleston, which is 18 miles east-southeast of the Coventry landfill, downwind from the Coventry landfill. And just want to say, it's nice to meet you in person, and I really want to thank you and your staff. Everyone, when I ask a question or request information, is super responsive, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. To begin, I also want to say 3 minutes, like I wrote this for 2 minutes, so I'm going to be able to relax and read more slowly now. To begin any discussion of a SAF air permit without requiring PFAS compounds to be included in the SAF air monitoring standard is inexplicable to me, an abdication of ANR's responsibility to protect the health of Vermonters and our environment. Secretary Moore has said recently that she appreciated concerns about an unknown, but it is known that PFAS in landfill air emissions are a clear and present danger. EPA has developed draft PFAS air monitoring standards and a draft PFAS air emissions test method. 7 states in the United States have already established and are enforcing interim PFAS air standards. Our Secretary Moore has the authority to match or exceed those interim standards now, leading the nation in restricting harmful PFAS air emissions. Failing to do so risks environmental and public health, particularly the health of Vermonters living closest to the state's only landfill who are potentially at greatest risk of PFAS exposure. One glaring flaw to me in NEWSVT's plan to operate SAF as an open loop rather than a closed loop system that captures and destroys PFAS. The SAF manufacturer and environmental science require the SAF be one step in treatment train, ending in PFAS destruction technology to prevent PFAS return to the environment. Why then would Vermont ANR permit this SAF experiment to operate as an open loop system if the goal is to capture, treat, and destroy PFAS, preventing their return to the environment? Open loop is the least expensive option for NEWSVT, as destruction technology is expensive. But permitting open loop shifts the risk and expensive long-term consequences onto our environment and the public. Will Vermont's ANR choose the most cost-effective option for a multi-billion-dollar corporation, or the most effective and protective option for Vermonters, our environment, our health, and our future generations? My other legitimate concerns will be addressed in written comments and probably by others tonight. They relate to other monitoring insufficiencies, the fact that one GAC filter would be applied to one of two vents instead of both vents as the EPAC SAF manufacturer requires. There are concerns about landfill disposal of residuals, and I'll get to them in writing. Thank you very much.
Valerie Dillon.
Hello, my name is Valerie Dillon, resident of Newport. Thank you for the opportunity to comment and ask questions about the draft air pollution control permit AP 25043. Thanks. I'm concerned about the SAF treatment of landfill leachate changing from a closed to an open system. It's well documented. The surface active foam fractionation process can generate micro droplets and taint the various chains. There's forever chemicals in that. So what else might be in there? We were told there wasn't any formal monitoring when we did it. Venting without managing or monitoring these emissions is further exposing our whole community. What we have learned are lessons from Bennington. The forever chemicals that were exposed there, air emissions laden, negatively impacted the whole environment, people, for a broad area, even beyond that industrial source. So please also note that our recharge zone for the city of Newport's drinking water wells are in proximity, and there's potential for hydrologic contamination from air pollution associated with the Coventry NEWSVT and the SAF emissions. What happened to the next step in treatment to break the chain of PFAS moving from consumer products into the environment and impacting ecosystems and our health? Since problems are opportunities, maybe you might want to consider the Revive Environmental PFAS Annihilator, formerly from Battelle. They actually came here and talked a while back. As the next step in treatment, using supercritical water oxidation, breaking those carbon-fluorine bonds, instead of just concentrating the PFAS and then storing them in cement blocks. That approach also includes monitoring and measuring treatment efficiency. So please, we need a DEC to protect the health of our public and our environment. And remember, the cost is so much greater when we pollute. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Pam Lads. I'm a resident of Newport, and I've been a frequent flyer at some of these meetings. I have to admit, when this came around again, my thought was, oh God, not again. Because meeting after meeting, those of us who live here come to you and say, no, this isn't okay. 7 years ago, we were here saying PFAS is an issue, PFAS is an issue, and you blew us off. In varying different ways, we were blown off. We remember that. So here we are again. And it's not that I don't understand that Casella has in some ways a bad deal. They are stuck with a lot of nasty stuff coming into their landfill. Whether the landfill should exist there is a whole different issue, and I'd love to get to that one. But they're stuck with it, and they are attempting to do something. But the reality is, again, we don't know what we don't know, but we do know that a lot of the chemicals that will be released into the air are problematic. You can probably tell I'm not local. I come from a country where we've had a lot of air pollution issues over the decades, and I'm way back in the decades. There are certainly parts of this country where air pollution has caused irreparable harm on generations of people. That should not be happening here, not in 2026. And it's true, we don't know that's going to happen, but we will only know that if you test what is going to be released. And telling us that it will be tested once and that's the end of it makes zero sense. I mean, that's willful blindness from where I sit or stand anyway. really of concern. There are so many concerns about this. We have this landfill here because activists, like many of us here, who wear that label with pride. And being an activist usually means that we actually care about the communities we live in. It's not that we're terrorists, although that does come round. Landfills were closed up and down the state of Vermont. We got stuck. We'd like that to be unstuck. And if you go away with something beyond what you're really here for, please consider that there needs to be somewhere else for a landfill, that this doesn't just get to expand. Thank you.
Next is Effie Brown. Yeah. Oh.
First, I want to say thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. It was suggested to me that I speak from the heart, so here we go. I just want to point out to people where I live. It's approximately here, and the landfill is here. So
You're gonna move the camera instead.
Yeah.
Want me to point to that again? Okay, my farm is here, and here's the landfill. Okay. That's if you want me to state my name, it's Effie Brown, in case that wasn't clear. That location that I pointed to is on Darling Hill Road in Derby. And the prevailing wind, April through September, are from the southwest. And as you can see, I'm pretty much directly north of the landfill. My grandparents, Rufus and Elfrida Brown, bought the farm that I live on today in 1904. They raised 16 kids. My dad, Donald Brown, was the youngest of those kids. He raised his family here, and my kids grew up here. I have adult children living in Orleans, as well as 7 grandchildren living in Orleans County. 2 living in Orleans, 4 living in Derby, and 1 living in North Troy. I have 3 great-grandchildren, Danny, who is 4, Lucy, who is 2, and they live on the farm that I'm on now. They are the 7th generation of Browns to live there on the farm, as well as myself. And of course, their parents, 6th generation. I also have Bentley, who is 2. He's living in Derby also. And then there's another one, Colton, who is 3. He lives in Orleans. As you can see on this map, we're pretty much centralized around this landfill. The airborne chemicals we are addressing here bioaccumulate in living organisms, as well as the water and the soil. My prayer is to never have to visit these little ones at St. Jude Hospital or any hospital due to a cancer or any related deadly disease developed due to living in close proximity to this landfill in Coventry, Vermont, with its unregulated air emissions. Where are the ambient air monitors, and where are they placed? I want to know what's in the air we are breathing now. What are the current readings of VOCs, HACs, and PFAS in the air that we're breathing? Before adding more hazardous air emissions, we have to have a baseline. We have to know that all residents are safe. We cannot allow the polluter to set the standards or to monitor themselves. I care about all 27,000 of us who live here in Orleans County. What goes up does eventually come down onto whatever water or soil is below. And we know airborne chemicals that are hazardous are going to come down. They're going to land somewhere. They're not going to stay suspended. So please, please, let's get some monitoring. We need some data. We can't just add more to what's already there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Teresa.
Hi, my name is Teresa Gerade. I'm a resident of Newport and a member of the Board of Directors of Don't Undermine Memphremagog's Purity, known as DUM. I speak here as an individual, as a resident of Newport. And I do want to thank you all for this meeting and this opportunity to speak our concerns and give you feedback. The title of the permit, on the draft permit document, is Air Pollution Control Permit to Construct. So what I know is that there's a building that's already constructed and that the actual SAF system was running in a test mode back in September of 2023. I don't think it was a closed loop then because it was just a trailer outside. So I don't know. There was no permit then. Somehow they had permission to run it that way. I don't know. But after reviewing the permit, I would conclude that it is premature to grant this permit because there has been no monitoring of emissions from the SAF system. There have been no pollution controls that I see put on the system, and there is no data on which to base granting the permit. All the levels of contaminants, whether it's PFAS, VOCs, or HACs, are either estimated, anticipated, or cited as potential. The estimates of air emissions related to the SAF are supplied by the applicant in their application for the permit. Are there other facilities that have real data that can be used to compare to these estimates? Because it's odd that to me that the applicant is like setting the estimate. They're the ones to gain from the grant of the permit. There are no hard numbers regarding air emissions from the SAF system on which to make informed decisions regarding the air quality for the Northeast Kingdom. There is no requirement in the draft permit to monitor for PFAS air emissions from the 2 open vents that will emit into the ambient air. The GAC filter on the exhaust vent is described as an odor control device and is not an air pollution control device. There is a one-time stack test for a list of 53 VOCs that will be done after the permit is granted. And the results of the test will be used to estimate the VOCs from the SAF system. This seems a little bit like the cart before the horse. The last air quality impact evaluation at the landfill was performed over 10 years ago. Since that time, there has been much knowledge gained regarding contaminants in air emissions, including PFAS. Now we know that PFAS is emitted in the air, that it travels far and wide, and that it is harmful to humans and the environment. Without air monitoring or an air quality impact evaluation, how can the state determine if the air is safe for those living near the landfill? I'm going to wrap it up if that was my time. Thank you. Condition 15 of the land use permit requires that a third-party firm independently inspect the landfill for off-site orders, and these reports are available on the Act 250 database. In the first 6 months of this year, odors have been detected outside of the bounds of the landfill property 63% of the time. And in some cases, odors were detected more than 2 miles from the property. 2 miles from the landfill in any direction is a pretty large area and affects a lot of people directly. And it includes downtown Newport and the waterfront. If odors are leaving the landfill property, what chemicals are also being carried on the wind? At what point are off-site odors considered unacceptable and require an action to ensure they cease to travel off-site? The emissions from the vents on the SAF system will also travel off-site. How many chemicals will be vented from the SAF system and at what concentration? If the stack test shows emissions that exceed state regulations, what action will be taken? In conclusion, I would say this permit is premature and should not be granted. There's been no actual monitoring of air quality. There are no requirements to actively monitor emissions, and the estimates put forward were made by the applicant in their application. How can this permit control air pollution if it doesn't monitor the air? Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Henry Cole. I live in Danville, part of the Northeast, the southern part of the Northeast Kingdom now, but I lived in Orleans in the watershed for most of my years. I have 4 sons who all live in 4 community towns within the watershed and a lot of grandchildren. As I do volunteer work for DUMP, I think of the health, the future health of my siblings and my friends. I've abbreviated 4 or 5 pages that I wrote in order to come in under the deadline, I hope. Landfills such as the state's only permitted active 129-acre private landfill in Coventry are reservoirs for highly toxic PFAS compounds, also known as forever chemicals. These compounds bioaccumulate in human bodies and have been linked to cancer, liver damage, and immune system dysfunction. Lake Memphremagog, a northern flowing international lake, serves as a drinking water source reservoir for 180,000 Canadians, including the cities of Sherbrooke and Magog in Quebec. Sherbrooke, by the way, is 2 or 3 times the size of Burlington. Drinking water reservoirs globally and in North America are protected from contamination through land use easements, water quality protections, and international boundary water treaties, such as the 1907 treaty between the US and Canada. What is wrong with this picture? I answer, Coventry landfill is sited in the wrong place. The landfill is surrounded on 3 sides by extensive wetlands, 1 mile upstream upslope from South Bay Lake Memphremagog, and within 700 feet of the Black River, the international lake's largest tributary. Under current EPA regulations, this landfill would never be allowed to be sited where it is today. It would be in violation of the Basel Treaty, an international convention which prohibits the transfer of contaminants across international boundaries without prior consent of the other. The population of the Northeast Kingdom's 3 counties contribute just 7% of the solid waste of the 600,000 tons permitted by state government per year in Coventry. The rest of the state together makes up the bulk of 93%, together with out-of-state waste, makes up the bulk of the 93% of the waste entering the Coventry landfill. This is called environmental injustice. These 600,000 tons per year of uninspected solid waste continually produce toxic leachate and methane, all landfill gas at the Coventry landfill, which includes at least 26 forever chemicals known as PFAS. We are Vermont's garbage dump, poised upstream from a drinking water supply for 180,000. Neighbors don't treat neighbors this way. This is immoral. I'm jumping around. I feel the Air Quality and Climate Division, in receiving this draft permit from News Vermont, has their focus on the wrong place. Landfill gas, constituting 50% of the total PFAS mass. And I'm not referring to leachate. SAF is directed toward cleaning up PFAS from leachate. But 50% of the mass of PFAS has been shown by environmental engineering since 24 to come from landfill gas, which escapes. It goes in Coventry, there's a gas to energy plant and flares, 2 flares. They don't remove PFAS. So that escapes into the air and is airborne. You feel the way other board members do, that this permit is premature, given it sets no standards for PFAS against which to measure mitigation and compliance efforts, especially for landfill gas. The A&R secretary, as Peggy said, could enact and should enact standards as 7 other states have already done. And with all respect, I think the AQCD, in my view, should redirect its focus to the transportation-centric system of solid waste movement in Vermont, including gas emissions from open-loop truck collection systems, including thousands of miles of truck diesel exhaust yearly. 7 transfer stations owned by Casella, as well as the 50% of PFAS mass escaping to the ambient air from landfill gas at the Coventry landfill. I have additional comments to make, but I will submit them.
Okay, great. Thanks so
And
much.
we'll also circle back for some more that you wanted to, once we get through this.
Thank you.
We, one panel.
That's been finished.
That's fine. You're letting me.
Oh, there's one.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good shape. Okay, and
Good evening. My name is Ann Lembo, and I live in Albany, and I'm also a member of the Board of Directors for Don't Undermine Meframagog Purity. And I thank you for this opportunity to comment and ask questions about the air pollution control permit AP 25043. First, I want to thank the members of the division who have put so much hard work into this. I know it's been a long and grueling process. So this is not a criticism of your work, but it is an expression of concerns that we have with the permit and the way it has been issued, at least the draft permit. We have expressed in the past concerns about the operation of the SAF system itself. It is supposed to only be one step in the process, in the treatment process of destruction of PFAS, which we are not doing. We're putting it back into the landfill, which is just going to concentrate PFAS and okay, thanks. It's just going to concentrate and it's kicking the can down the road. The concerns that are related to this permit are the change from a closed loop system to an open loop system. I don't know if there wasn't anything in the statement of facts that indicates that anyone else is operating this system as an open loop system rather than a closed loop system. It has been operating since September of 2023 as a closed loop system, and at least since June 2024 as a closed loop system. It seems that there should be some data that have been accumulated from that operation, and some data, rather than making estimates, the operator should have some data about what's happening even as a closed loop system that could instruct how an open loop system would operate and what the change would be. We just don't know what the change is going to be for that. Basically, the emissions of air emissions of contaminants have been estimates or anticipated. I mean, they're basically guesses, and we do deserve to have more information about this. The SAF system, the SAF process accelerates PFAS molecules and can generate microdroplets tainted with precursors that become PFAS that would be emitted into the ambient air. I don't know if you've had chemists review this process and determine what happens when it does move back into the air. Does the manufacturer recommend the use of an open loop system? The only thing I've seen is that they recommend a closed loop system. They also recommend destruction, which we're not doing. So the residents here have been, are being exposed. Is that me?
That is.
Okay, so then I can wrap it up. You know, we think that the draft permit is deficient in air monitoring. We would like to see more air monitoring of emissions. There is technology to have constant air monitoring on the landfill or right off site of the landfill that would enable residents in the area to know what's happening to their air. And we will be submitting written comments as well. So I'm going to wrap up here. The one thing that I do ask is that you remember the children. Children that live in this area deserve to have clean air, clean water, and to eat food that does not come from contaminated soil. PFAS contaminates all of those things. So please keep that in mind when you're doing your review and issuing your final permit, and give it at least equal weight to the corporation, the billion-dollar corporation that wants to put in the least expensive system. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Lori Lakin, and I live in Westmore, Vermont, and moved here recently, have come to a few dump meetings. And I didn't realize there was going to be a 3-minute limit because really I came here to have a conversation about filtration. It's really a concern because, first of all, you know, as an air control system, if you have an open system, the air is not getting filtered, and the manufacturer of the GAC filters, OPAC, recommends they require 2 filters, that both of the vents be filtered. So the conversation was, how was that decision made that there would only be 1 filter? Who made that decision and why? So I think I might be amongst the last commenters, so maybe after this, we can proceed to answer some of the questions that people have asked. As the second one is about the changing of the filters. You know, if you have a home water system, you change that filter every 3 or 6 months. And you know, how often will these filters be changed? They're going to be exposed to a lot more toxic material, and who even knows how often they should be changed? Because if they're not changed, they're totally ineffective. And, you know, once again, we continue spewing toxic waste into the air. And then Finally, well, the third concern was, which has been talked about, like, once we have these air filters and they have been spent, they're expired, how do we dispose of them? Once again, do they get concentrated into the landfill? So really my fourth concern through all of this, through the meetings that I've attended, is that questions have been asked and then I put my name on the email and I'm not getting responses to any of the questions that I've asked. And the ANR is responsible for sustaining and protecting our environment. And all the evidence that's been presented over these years is just undeniable. And it still goes on. And I have many friends in Quebec of those 180,000 people living to the north of us peacefully. And it is an international crime that we're talking about here. So I'd really like to know who is going to be actively monitoring this whole process, from the changing of the filters to where the filters go to how much air, how much pollutant is being spewed into our atmosphere, to our land, to the water. So I don't know if there's anybody else asking questions after me, but it would be nice to have a conversation about that.
Yeah, I made a note of some questions, and we can answer clarifying questions after that.
Okay, good.
Sounds good. Ed, looks like you're in there.
My name is Ed Stanek, and I'm the vice chair of DUMP. I've been involved with DUMP since the year 2018. And I wanted to say at the beginning that my comments on behalf of DUMP are not meant at all as a criticism for the rank and file employees of the Agency of Natural Resources. I respect the work you do on behalf of the people of Vermont. My comments apply to process and procedure. DUMP will be providing detailed written comments, and I just provide some summary overview comments this evening. And in summary, DUMP contends that the draft permit is insufficient on its face, and it should be withdrawn and subject to substantial rewriting and reconsideration. Alternatively, the application should be denied because the applicant has not met its evidentiary burden of proof in obtaining the permit. It's incomprehensible to us that the SAF, which has been in operation for 3 years now, the applicant could have and should have been collecting data as to what the actual emissions have been there. They've been operating it as a test. Now we have a pilot. I think that's a difference without a distinction. The thing has been in operation for 3 years now. More specifically, the draft decision we feel constitutes inadequate findings of fact. The draft permit proposes to authorize a pretreatment system that will remove PFAS from leachate and generate PFAS emissions, but the draft findings state no evidence, hardly make any reference to PFAS. This is despite the fact, I'm getting a little choked up here. This is despite the fact that the attachment A to the pretreatment discharge permit delineates 22 PFAS compounds which are present in the leachate. So here we have the high test leachate going into the SAF with at least 22 PFAS compounds in it, and the draft permit doesn't really specify anything specific to PFAS compounds. The draft permit contains no standards for PFAS emissions from the SAF. For the record, we should indicate that DUMP has filed a petition with the Secretary of the Agency of Natural Resources to adopt interim PFAS standards. We suggest that the division suspend review of this application until the Secretary acts and adopts those interim PFAS standards, which should be applicable to this project. In the interim, we suggest that the SAF system be shut down and not operate. An additional comment on inadequate findings of fact deals with the HEMSR for the project. HEMSR is an acronym. I always forget what it means. I think it stands for Hazardous Most Stringent Emission Rate. All right. So the regulations require HEMSR when hazardous air contaminants exceed their action levels. This draft decision does talk about a HEMSR at page 21. However, it sort of kicks the can down the road, in my opinion. It talks about the existing SAF being adequate, the existing HEMSR being adequate for the SAF. However, the SAF is not physically connected to the existing gas collection and flaring system. So there's a non sequitur there. How can the existing HEMSR be applicable to the SAF when there is no physical connection? Trying to wrap it up here, we also think in addition to inadequate findings of fact, the decision contains impermissible conditions subsequent. As we know, conditions subsequent are conditions in a permit as a substitute for adequate affirmative evidence upon which that permit is issued. We think conditions 22 and 23 as an example are conditions subsequent in this decision. Condition 23 deals with stack testing that's proposed for the project. There's a table in condition 23 that lists 53 chemical compounds that can be tested. There's not one PFAS chemical compound in that list. I think I know the reason for that. And the reason is that currently Vermont has no authority to regulate PFAS air emissions because there are no PFAS air emissions in Appendix B or C for the rules. That brings me back to interim standards by the Secretary. People have talked about how the odors travel to downtown Newport. I'm not a scientist, but I generally believe that odors are an indicator of other emissions. So if people are breathing the stench in downtown, my suspicion is they're breathing hazardous air contaminants and probably PFAS compounds. This is serious stuff. I'm almost finished. I think the permit, Dump feels the permit should contain explicit upstream and downstream testing requirements for both the HACs and the PFAS. It should at least test for the 5 most common PFAS air emissions in the landfill, at least according to our reading of the scientific literature. Those 5 PFAS compounds are PFDA, PFXA, PFDOA, PFOA, and PFHPA. That's a lot of alphabet right there. We think the testing should be ongoing than the pilot, and that there should be real-time monitoring results which are available online to the public. We think the technology exists. So constant monitoring at the vents on the SAF as to what the emissions are for the compounds, including the PFAS, and that the public should be available. The public should be able to see those results in terms of real-time results online. Finally, there is a finding in the decision back to the HEMSR that it's required for the SAF emissions. And the point here is that my reading or our reading of the requirement for the HEMSR is that a final HEMSR will be determined at such time as the division issues its draft decision for the renewal of the operating permit. That's how we're interpreting that paragraph on page 21. The concern there is that the HEMSR, in addition, right now not being connected, the SAF not being connected physically to the gas collection flaring system, that by postponing a final HEMSR for the project until the operating permit is unacceptable, because the renewal for the operating permits is probably a substantial amount of time down the road. So those are our comments. I apologize for losing my voice here, and thank you for listening.
If they'd like to speak. I read the first name, but the last name is Jones. Yep. Holly.
Yes, I'm Holly. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Thank you, everybody who has responded to all of my requests in your department. I'm really pleased that we have this type of relationship, that we can communicate openly with you. I really appreciate it. And I also want to say that you are dealing with not just a permit for a project, but this is for the people in the surrounding communities. I appreciate that you recognize that. In 2016, the Agency of Natural Resources was confronted with a catastrophe involving airborne PFAS contamination in Bennington. PFAS emitted from the stacks of St. Gobain contaminated the air, soil, groundwater, and surrounding communities. Although St. Gobain has ceased operations, PFAS contamination continues to spread. I want you to understand that Bennington is a city. The contamination is spreading continually. 10 years have now passed since this air emissions disaster was discovered. More than enough time for our Secretary Moore to establish interim enforceable PFAS air pollution standards. I am a Bennington County resident, and I personally know the health impacts and damage to air, soil, and groundwater caused by this pollution disaster. The cost has been heartbreaking and immeasurable. And I follow Effie in saying that what is worse is that we will never know the full extent of the damage because PFAS cannot be seen, smelled, or felt. It's easy for the public to misattribute the harm that it does. In considering this draft permit, the ANR knows the harm. It should act accordingly. I urge the AQCD to postpone the approval of this permit until Vermont establishes enforceable PFAS air emission standards and requires comprehensive monitoring, filtration, residual handling, and PFAS destruction measures. Protecting the Memphremagog watershed and surrounding communities must take precedence over issuing a permit that leaves significant pollution pathways unregulated. I thank you very much for listening, and I thank you very much for considering all of the statements that have been made.
Hello, my name is Mike Delands, and I'm a taxpayer in Newport City for 48 years. And I live as close as that marina to that Olympic torch, whatever, that burns in the air. And it's beautiful, actually. In the wintertime, it just lights up. It just looks beautiful. But is it really safe? Well, I'm not here for this, but because my pet peeve is leachate. But anyways, I'm here for air quality right now, and I'm not here for this either. I've been diagnosed with melanoma cancer, and is there a connection? Who knows? And as far as I'm concerned, I don't really care, but I do care for the younger generation, and I don't understand. Well, the dump's been there for 30 years or better, at least. And all of a sudden now we're going to monitor the air, which maybe it did before. I don't know. I don't know the facts. I'm not watched that much, but I know in Bennington, I read somewhere or heard something where, yeah, the groundwater got all polluted and this and that, whatever. Okay, and they're worse than us, actually. But then all of a sudden the smokestacks that they were burning stuff said, oh, that's safe. That's safe. No, that's good. Well, it's only going to be in a certain area. Well, they're finding now what 20 miles away, the land, the soil is being polluted from those smokestacks, or they think it is. So, you know, it's amazing how we contribute 7-10% to this landfill, and it's basically a dump. Okay, let's call it a dump. And in this area, this is where the dump is. And as far as I'm concerned, the people of the Northeast Kingdom are basically getting dumped on. And our neighbors up there where they drink water. And like I said, I have no facts, but I think it's something's going to stop. Because I know my buddy and I, we used to go fishing. at the end of South Bay. And yeah, the dump's on this side of the road. On this side of the road, they've been carrying dirt from over here over. So I know their plan, in my opinion, that they are going to start dumping right there. They're going to dig a hole and fill it out there, and it's going to be on this side of the lake. So, you know, it's like, when is the state going to stop rubber stamping all this stuff? It's got to stop. It's got to stop. And thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your work. I wasn't planning to talk, so this may be a bit garbled. I saw a loon out there and I said, okay, I've got to speak. One thing that occurs to me is that the Department of Public Health should issue a statement that indicates that any proposal has no detrimental effect to the people that will be impacted by the air emissions. We live in an area where the land, we have a Superfund site for all practical purposes. The land has been contaminated. The water has been contaminated. We have fish that exceed concentrations of PFOS chemicals. We have the only lake in Vermont with brown bullheads with malignant melanomas, found nowhere else in Vermont. So the land has been contaminated. The water has been seriously contaminated. And now we have a proposal for air pollution, land, water, air. And it feels like it's a very minimal, a thin safety net that's been put in place. As other people have suggested, we need today, paid for by the corporation, an online air monitoring systems in critical spaces that are posting lifetime results so that individuals who have largely been disempowered in terms of what is happening here have agency to say, I'm not going to go out today. I'm not going to run today. I'm not going to be out exposed to this today. There's a let them eat cake sense of this by not providing information about what is happening to air quality. We should be empowered to make decisions. And why is that not in place today? Can the corporation not afford to install monitoring equipment that reads out to the public information where they can make decisions that protect themselves and their children, et cetera, et cetera? Again, land, water, and now a threat to the air. We are paying a heavy price here. And we should not be carrying the weight. There should be an offsetting balance that provides some degree of protection. We've already been grossly impacted, and this should not be another insult. This should not be another assault of the citizens. Thank you.
A lot of good comments tonight. I'm a Coventry resident. My name is Robert Fortunati. I've started complaining about odors back before all this permitting for air number 15, where we pushed for, or I pushed for it anyway, for third-party monitoring. So now this time of year, now I live on the ridge that perimeters the dump. Got a front row seat to it. So this time of year, you have your morning fog, and when it lifts, Okay, you have got to time it. Shut all your windows and doors. And you're going to be inside for about 15 minutes. Now, I had at one point in that permit, 30-minute response, 7:24. Well, they amended it. I fought against it. They put it to an hour. Well, I already been through that with the hour-long part, calling the state, have them come up there. At that point, that order is drifted off. But it doesn't mean that I'm not breathing it. It doesn't mean that that light fog and dew all over the place is carrying something with it. If you can smell it, it's not good for you. So I will be making comments in this.
Make sure they have their turn, then we'll come back. Assuming we did. Yes.
Frankie, do you want to come off mute?
Yes, please. I am not an experienced orator, so please bear with
Sorry,
me.
One moment. Sorry, what was that?
Can you hear me?
Can you stop sharing the slides and share the screen?
I don't actually know how to get it. Oh, well, actually, maybe I can. Maybe I can. Okay, yeah. I'm not sure if I can hear her.
We can hear.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable? Okay.
Right.
This is being recorded video and audio, so we can try to make that available. Okay. Go
Okay.
ahead, Frankie. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. No, that's fine. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to preface quickly with the fact that I'm not an experienced orator. I'll try to get this done really fast. Hi. Good evening to all, and thank you for this public forum and for all the work we all do here. My name is Liza Francesca Nani, and I live gratefully at Cathedral Square Senior Public Housing in Burlington, Vermont, as an average concerned citizen. I am a disabled senior with chronic, now asthmatic bronchitis. I am, to the best of my knowledge, second of 3 generations either coping with or now suffering with progressive familial autism. My nephew is profoundly autistic and does not speak. Reducing chemicals, especially PFAS, from our beloved Vermont environment is a critical issue to me, both personally as well as desperately wanting to protect all successive generations in Vermont and the world from the evidence-based, proven virulent diseases caused directly by PFAS, forever chemical contamination, which is a clear and present danger to all life, including water, food, and not limited to children who need their older family members to stick around, and also to tourism in our fair state. It's also a clear and present danger to all life, including water, food. Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate that. I believe Casella and the state need expert technical assistance to treat this particular issue immediately, yesterday, as again, the clear and present danger that it is. My question is it irresponsible for legislators to be complicit by not immediately preventing all PFAS contamination, including this air emissions of PFAS in the SAF process, open process? And I, again, am not an expert, and thank you very much for taking my question.
Thank you, Frankie. Marguerite, do you want to come off mute and give your comment? I can't hear you if you're speaking. Marguerite, can you hear us? Try to unmute you. Marguerite, I'm not able to unmute you. Oh,
I just unmuted myself. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Could you just say your name for the recording?
Sure. My name is Marguerite Edelman. I am the founder of the Vermont PFAS Coalition. And I just want to comment on a few things. I would agree that this permit is premature and should not be allowed to go forward. The comments that have been made are so excellent and need to really be addressed by ANR. There's no doubt in my mind that this system is going to add to the problem of PFAS and other toxins in our environment. And those living in the Northeast Kingdom are going to be suffering the most because of this. And that is, and I would say again, an environmental justice issue as well as an international crime. PFAS is, and within the last few years, is all over the news. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that we need to simply ban the stuff, but unfortunately, given that it is ending up in landfills, it is imperative that any permits issued have comprehensive testing standards for PFAS and for all the other toxins that are going to be released. And as someone mentioned, when they mix together, they change, they multiply. And we cannot deny that as we move forward. I will speak also to the fact that my grandchildren live in Quebec, and they are 7 and 11. And there is a need at this point to revisit Rachel Carson's whole information about toxins in our environment and contaminants. We need to care about future generations. My son-in-law is a glaciologist for the Canadian government, and PFAS has been found in glaciers in the far north. So the fact that these travel, and they travel extensively, cannot be denied. And my question for ANR is, how many negative comments do you need to get before you deny a permit? And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak and to have a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Marguerite. Do you have another one?
Okay, we have one more person in the room, so
Okay,
let's go
let's
back to the room and then we'll come back.
Yeah, David, we'll come back to you.
Good afternoon, or good evening. I'm Bill Coleman. I'm from the town of Newark. I can say that in Lindenville, there are some minor Superfund sites, and I don't know how minor. I mean, I don't want to minimize about what's even going on there, but there are some old dumps over there that have been designated as Superfund sites. Generally, they're not funded for cleanup. Some have been, but to think about the minute size of the deposits that are have been left there long ago over the years, compared to this massive 600,000 ton a year operation over here, is just like comparing a grain of sand to the Mojave Desert. I mean, this place is just extraordinarily out of control. There's a multi-billion-dollar corporation that is operating this. Has just been they basically are self-regulating. There's just so little ability to really tell what's going on over there. There should be huge levies. It really should be closed down, but there should be huge amounts of money being extracted from them annually just to pay for the testing so that it can be done independently of them. And it's just a real outrage that this continues to go on for profit. They're totally conflicted in the way they operate. Are someone watching what's going on up there at night? I mean, this place is just, they need 24-hour a day monitoring to be taking place. And really, we need to know exactly what's going in there. And we certainly do know that Casella is one of 4 primary contractors, that, at least that I have found, that are picking up sewage sludge from huge municipal facilities like down in the Boston area that serves Boston and 43 surrounding municipalities. They get rid of it any way they can. They dump it off anywhere they can. I suspect it's mixed in with a lot of the stuff that's getting sprayed onto cornfields and hay fields by the trucks that we see all over the place. But the cheaper the better as far as their efforts to get rid of it. I know a lot of it probably does end up here, and it's just the different types of industrial solvents and things, probably stuff from Logan Airport that they're just getting all mixed together in there, and then it just gets trucked up here, quite a bit of it, or put out on land. It's just permanently contaminated. It's not going to be okay 20 years from now. There'll be residues there, and we're all getting poisoned by it, and it's also a huge threat to the quality that farmers have worked so hard for over the years. The hard-fought, hard-won integrity of Vermont agricultural products is really being threatened, and it's not being explored all that much by the media. In fact, there's very little attention being paid to this whole thing, but eventually the bubble will burst, and in any case, even if it's never widely known, it's a huge hazard to people's health. And this situation is just it's really a case of corporations just not being looked after at all by the government. And they'll say, "Oh, look at all the jobs over here and everything." Well, think of it, a lot of extra jobs too in healthcare now. People working in hospitals, tending to people who are being completely having their lives destroyed by all this cancer that's being caused. And what are we supposed to do? Be able to figure out exactly, oh, this is all being caused by Casella? I mean, it cost a fortune to prove this, but this is just obviously, it's a really dangerous operation over there, and time has long since passed for this whole thing to be shut down over there, not to mention have it permission to start emitting things into the air while emitting these PFAs into the air. It's just a very sad situation.
David, would you like to come off mute?
Sure. Does everyone hear me well?
Yes, I hear you.
David Largy Nadeau from the Memphremagog Regional County Municipality based in Magog, Quebec. Thanks for organizing this public consultation and for the opportunity to speak. I have just a question regarding condition 22 of the permit. I was wondering why ask for a technical feasibility study for emission testings for PFAS instead of simply requiring the stack testing. Why go through this additional process? So that's when I was reading the permit, it was one of the questions that came up. So yeah, that's just if there was an answer for that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
I think that all the people who wanted to speak or make a comment. Don't feel like you can comment or answer on any of the questions that were posed tonight.
Yeah, I think this question about why is there a little.
Yeah, they proposed one filter on the system for odor control. And yeah, we are not exceeding any action level here, so we can't use that 261 authority to require anything additional at this time.
There's no PFAS air emission standard. Cannot exceed.
For the hazardous air contaminants that are in the regulations that are in the permit.
Even though the PFAS, the manufacturer, requires both vents to be filtered with gas in order to prevent emission of hazardous contaminants. I just don't know.
So just to be clear, we're going to be answering all comments and questions in writing, and everyone, if you want to provide your email, we can give you direct access to that and email it to you. Otherwise, it'll be posted on the website and on the environmental notice bulletin. So we can answer some clarifying questions, but if there's kind of more policy related questions, we'll have to respond to those in writing at after 28.
I just perhaps follow up with something related to my comments is why is there not an air monitoring system up and running right now with live data available to the public through an independent source? Why is that not required of the operator 10 years ago, let alone today?
Yeah, we don't have any mechanism in our regulations right now to require, we have EMV.
Technology doesn't exist to provide instant air quality measurements at the fence line.
Aren't there snippers?
You can't do that with particulates.
We can explore that and provide a more comprehensive response, I think, in writing. Yeah, I think there's maybe more complicated answer to that.
We'll build a place you can book one. Happy?
I'm wondering, the thought just occurred to me in listening here tonight. I know that Casella pays a dumping fee to the state of Vermont for every load, every ton, whatever. Why doesn't the state of Vermont utilize that money to do the air monitoring? I mean, what, the hell? You know, it makes sense to me. And then we have some knowledge.
We can take that down, yeah, as a comment.
Can you speak up?
So we can take that down as a comment. I mean, we're limited to what we, in terms of our scope being the air division and our jurisdiction over the air permit. So we can answer clarifying questions about the permit tonight. Otherwise, we'll have to get back, unfortunately. Yeah.
Oh, right, Amanda. Part of our frustration as citizens here is that almost every question that gets asked at any of these meetings the question is beyond the scope of the panel. Even though the question from where we sit is totally relevant because we live here, we're breathing the air, we're drinking the water, we're swimming in the water, etc. Divide and conquer is not a useful mechanism for us who live here. It may be very productive for the state, and the state, as we know, uses that mechanism in other areas too. But I would like that to be conveyed yet again to the state, that it's not fair putting you in that position because you don't have the information to ask it. It is beyond your scope, but we have nowhere to go. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Fine.
Yes, back to the question about requiring the gas canisters on both vents. Permit condition number 2 says the permittee shall operate the SAF system in a manner consistent with the SAF system manufacturer's operation and maintenance recommendations. And what I've heard from people here tonight is that the manufacturer requires that a GAC be attached to both vents. So how is only having one of them operating the SAF system as recommended by the manufacturer's operation and maintenance?
Can you give your name again and we can?
Yes, my name is Anne Monroe.
Okay, and we'll add that to your comment.
Okay.
I have to say, my heart leaped when I read that sentence. It's like, oh, operate according to the manufacturer's recommendations. Yes, exactly. And then it all disappeared. It's like an Alice in Wonderland experience to read this draft permit. And again, I know you're operating within constraints beyond your control. This is nothing personal, but it is beyond tragic.
Is there interface with the Department of Health, recognizing the implications of this? Is there a layer, a filter by which you folks will consider all of this information, but liaison with the Department of Health to make sure that there are not
different
risks that are afforded a population that will be directly exposed? Is that part of a normal processing of a permit when public health is put at risk?
So the action levels that we currently have on the books, those are all developed through the Department of Health. So if there is a situation where we end up including or developing interim standards for PFAS compounds, there will definitely be interaction with the Department of Health.
And
they will establish those, essentially it's a trigger level, so it's a mass per time number based on toxicity. And they will establish those numbers for us to then integrate into our regulations.
I'll follow up back. Oh, sure. You want to follow me?
Oh, sure.
My name is Samantha Stevens, and I've been to many of these meetings. And I am distressed as a young person in this community, raising a young child and choosing to come back here to do so. And Peggy, my mother, says this is not personal, but it is deeply personal. My friends and my family members are being diagnosed with gliomas and early Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and cancers. They are struggling with reproduction. And all of these are issues that research is now tying to PFAS chemicals that are accumulating in our environment, an environment that I have spent my entire life growing up in and which I have chosen to bring my child back to be raised in. And the state of Vermont can continue not to measure the impact of the landfill, the dump on our community, and continue to be able to say, we don't know what the impact of the dump is on our environment and on our health, but we are measuring increases in the health impact in this community. And we are seeing the increases in things like ADHD in our children, which are also being tied to forever chemicals that are being emitted by the dump. So I am really tired of saying that this is not personal. It is deeply personal. And I think that we need to keep that at the forefront because the language of the permit does matter. And when someone who has not actually managed to create a SAF system that comes to completion asks me to take other aspects of their treatment program and change them in ways that might further increase the impact to me and my children and the children that we serve in this community, that is personal. And I am frustrated. And I have been in this room on too many nights hearing the same answers. So thank you. I was not prepared to speak, but I appreciate the opportunity.
Just one supplemental question about the GAC.
You just state your name again for the transcript. You don't have to come up. You don't.
My name's Ed Stagg. So one more supplemental question about the GAC. So if the applicant is representing the use of the GAC as an odor control, as is recognized in the permit, and it's true that the manufacturer, EPOC, the manufacturer of the SAF, considers the GAC an integral component of the GAC in terms of controlling the emissions, shouldn't the GAC be explicitly required in this permit as an emission control for the containment of the PFAS emissions? It's a long-winded question. But the short version is the permit reflects it as the applicant suggests as an odor control. My understanding is the manufacturer says it's an integral manufacturer specification for the control of PFAS emissions. I think there's a disconnect there.
Yeah, I don't think it's something we can answer in the room.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Joseph Gresser from the Chronicle, and I have, I think it's a question you can answer. In the basic permit info, it says stack testing is required for hazardous air contaminants. Then afterwards, it says permittee will assess technical feasibility of additional testing for PFAS. Does that indicate that PFAS is not considered an HAC or, okay, so.
Well, it's not.
It's not that they're also going to do more testing for PFAS.
So in our world, HAC is a hazardous air contaminant. So Those are, when we use that acronym, it refers to the compounds that are already established with action levels. And that's where we mentioned of the PFAS compounds. All of a sudden, we want to make those into hacks. We'll work with the Department of Health and they'll establish an action level. And at that point, now we have a, you know, essentially a point where we can determine as to whether or not they're above or below that action level. If they're above it, it gives us authority to review various control devices.
Right, but when we're referring, yeah, on this bullet, we're referring to hacks that are listed in the regulations. So there may be other hacks that are not listed in the regulations. That means there's not a standard for those.
I have a question related to what Mr. Gressler just asked, which PFOA and PFOS are designated as hazardous in water. Would that not then translate to PFOS and PFOA being hazardous in air emissions?
It may be that, again, that's where the Department of Health will come in if you know, if secretary wants to start establishing action levels, that's where the Department of Health would come in. And they would also be the ones to help decide which are those target compounds, which are the high priority compounds that we should be evaluating.
But this is there's details in the regulations about how standards are set at the end of the regulations. And so it's a pretty detailed technical and regulatory process to establish a standard that, as Jay mentioned, involves the Department of Health. So that would be a process we would have to evaluate to determine if there's sufficient health data available, and then to make a decision about what would be protective.
Okay, we're just about at past our time, but we can take a few more comments or questions, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's a comment, if you want to include it in your comment, just say your name for the transcript.
My question is, say they monitor and it's way over acceptable. What is the next step?
Meaning just.
So
Yeah.
what are you talking about, PFAS compounds?
And exceed any standards?
Yeah, so really the first thing that would happen is they would decide which compounds to establish action levels for. Once there was action levels established, and if there was requirements for testing, the tests would be made, and then if there was an exceedance of those action levels, that gives us the authority to then require them to go and look at various control technologies or destruction technologies.
Over here.
As Peggy said, two PFAS compounds are considered hazardous by EPA in 2024. This was disputed and appealed by the waste industry. Just last week, it was upheld by a 3-judge panel in the DC Circuit.
Yep.
My question is, if the manufacturer says PFAS filtration from leachate should occur, it shall occur in a treatment train, the last stage of which is destructive technology. Right now, contrary to a fictional statement in the application by Sanborn Head on page 2, which said the landfill will comply with all of the manufacturer's instructions. That's not so. Right now, it's being dumped back into the landfill, encased in so-called porous cement. I've handled cement, it's porous. It will release as well as contain. And that's a hazardous waste in the subject of PFOA and PFOS, two designated as hazardous, going back into the landfill. Well, there are state and federal laws against municipal landfills, which is what Coventry is classified as, even though it's a statewide landfill, prohibiting hazardous materials going back into the landfill by an industrial user. Casella is definitely an industrial user. They make money from dumping hazardous materials, so-called filtrating them, and then dumping them back into the landfill in porous cement. This makes no sense. I don't know how you will analyze this and interpret it, and whether it reaches an action level. I don't know. I speak respectfully. I really do for you state employees.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate your comment.
Marguerite, I see you put a question in the chat. Did you want to say it aloud or do you want me to read it?
Sorry, I just lost my chat. Let me go back. Why don't you go ahead and read it?
It says, can NEWSVT determine if it is not, quote, feasible to test for PFAS? It seems backwards to let NEWSVT make this determination. So since we had another question about the feasibility condition, essentially NEWSVT will be required to study the feasibility of testing the unit, and then the agency will make a determination about whether it's feasible to be tested. So that's, I don't know if that's helpful, but there were some questions about whether it is feasible. So
They'll submit a report to us, we'll review, and we can say, no, go look at this a little bit more. Or, what about this? And inevitably we'll be back and forth. They're all public documents, obviously.
Last comment?
I'm sorry to bring this back up again. I just want to get a clarification. I think I heard you say that the technology does not exist for air sampling in real time in terms of the range of contaminants that may be of public health risk, or did I not?
Well, you need to be specific about what contaminants you're looking for.
Frankly, I don't know the full range, but I heard you say that the technology didn't exist to be able to, I mean, does technology exist to allow for air sampling and reporting the results real time for a variety of chemicals, just generically?
Well,
does that technology exist?
normally you have to collect a sample. It has to go to a big space laboratory for analysis. And there's a whole chain of custody procedure with that. There's a whole calibration procedure you have to do for running the analyses. And with PFAS, you're talking about stuff in the part per trillion. So it starts to get to be what they call a rather daunting challenge, actually sample.
Thank you.
And if you're going to do sampling, you normally need a program that actually explains how things are going to work and if you're actually collecting representative samples.
I think one thing we could add there too, with the SAP unit, the airflow is very low. So you need in order to get enough PFAS compounds, you need a large volume of air to actually get to a point where you can actually make it measurable. There's a lot of complexities there of what's in the gas stream if they do that.
there is some information about. See how long it is. I was just going to say there is some information about the state air monitoring program on our website with real-time data. It's not like at every town, but we have air monitors that kind of monitor ambient air across the state. There are some, like they're called purple air monitors, but they don't necessarily test for the types of contaminants that Tony was talking about. They're typically for like particulate matter and things like that. But we do have some information online about kind of air monitoring generally, and then we can try to address more specifics in the response to comments and provide more information.
I just had a question, and I know this isn't real time, but considering that you're talking about having charcoal filters on the stacks, is it possible or likely that you could analyze them and sort of work backwards, given the amount of time that they're in place, and determine at least roughly the amount of PFAS that is being used?
Yeah, I mean, we can look into that. Yeah, there's just,
The problem is you need to run a baseline sample before you do that, because you don't know if there's PFAS in it to start with.
You need, in other words, you need to check the charcoal. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I'm not asking you to do it for me. I was just asking the question. Thank you.
Yeah, we can add that to the comment.
Yep.
What was your name again, just for the transcript?
Excuse me?
Can you just share your name just for the transcript?
Joseph Gresser.
Okay. Okay, great.
Well, thank you, everybody, for your time tonight and your comments.
My name is Adam Ortiz. I'm the Independent Candidate of Congress for Vermont. What is the very best system? And is this the very best system? Because Vermont makes money for being beautiful. And if we become uninhabitable for any reason, that's going to mess up everybody's lives. So moral high ground aside, money is directly connected to clean water, clean air, beauty. So what is the very best system for this to be addressed? And is this system the very best system?
for treating leachate.
Every single thing that has to do with cleaning, Vermont cannot be dirty. We have to have beauty. We have to have clean air, clean drinking water to protect the brand. Everybody's industry is directly connected to beauty. The Vermont brand is nature. So is this system the very best system available? And is there a better system that can be applied? That's what I'm asking.
Well, we haven't evaluated the system, so they proposed a system. We evaluate it. We don't evaluate all the various systems out there.
But you can find more information about the SAF system and the purpose behind it in the.
You understand my point, right? If this is not the very best system, what is? And let's get that one moved forward.
Yeah, I think we should take this.
Yeah, we just
Just pass it along to the powers that be.
Yeah.
That if they mess up everybody else's money, every single industry is going to be upset that the Vermont brand is being affected by one person, one group. So these are like, this is not just somebody at a meeting upset. These are very rich people that are going to lose a lot of money because somebody doesn't want to be a good neighbor and clean up after themselves. Nicest way to put it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for the comment.
Thanks for your comments.
All for me in November. I'm more teasing than the candidate.
Again, thank you, everybody, for coming out and sharing your comments, and it's my first introduction to this group in a while, and they are really thoughtful, and you're educated and eloquent, and I think you always were address your concerns really well.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, just make sure. Oh, yeah.
Oh, if
Thank
somebody
you.
wants to put their email address on the sign-in sheet.
Yeah, if I would say leave your email if you want to receive an email copy of the response to comments. Otherwise, it'll be online. As we mentioned, the agency will be responding to all comments received today and in writing. And if you'd like to email further comments, please use the email address that we have listed here. It's also on our website.
Hi, I missed the email address. Is there any way?
I'll put it. Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Thank
Actually,
you.
here, I'll put it on this screen real quick so you can see it.
I know, just kind of scared of stuff.
Thank you very much.
You see that?
Yes, thank you.
Jay, we have to. Okay, if you refer to. So you can.
Okay, yep.
Pretty much beyond that.
Screen. Come on, print screen. Print screen. Can't see. I wrote it down. Thank you.